All right, welcome everyone to the second webinar in our series called Creative Adaptation, focusing on out of school time. Today is our webinar on out of school time planning with Heather May on November 23rd at 1 p.m. Welcome everyone knocking on the door. So, please mute your device until you are speaking. And if you can, please do not present your screen as I am presenting and Heather will as well. Feel free to add your questions and comments in the chat box. We will answer them as they come up and as it makes sense in the flow of conversation. Here is a reference shot of features if you're not already familiar with Google Meet. What's important is that most of our time will be in screen share. So if you need to change your display settings, you should go to the bottom right-hand corner, click those three dots, and you can change your display settings from there. Now, I'd like to just share some grounding slides that are important to the MSAC Equity and Justice mission, vision, and values. So equity and justice. The Maryland State Arts Council celebrates our state's diversity and promotes the role of the arts to connect people, bridge our differences, and inspire an appreciation of our shared humanity. Because the arts have the power to transform individuals and communities, MSAC is committed to advancing diversity, equity, and inclusion in all aspects of our organization and across all the communities of our state, and in supporting our partners in modeling the same commitment. Our vision is that MSAC plays an essential role in ensuring every person has access to the transformative power of the arts. And our mission is that MSAC advances the arts in our state by providing leadership that champions creative expression, diverse programming, equitable access, lifelong learning, and the arts as a celebrated contributor to the quality of life for all the people of Maryland. Now, today we are focused on 4 goals that are aligned with our strategic planning goals. However, all of them are just as important. So goal 1 is increase participation. Goal 2 is provide intentional support. Goal 3 is build capacity. Goal 4 is leverage connections. And goal 5 is bolster Maryland arts. And we also like to ground ourselves on how we like to connect and share virtual space with each other through creative meeting actions. So we celebrate being in this space with other creative people. We engage with everyone's presence as a gift. We acknowledge that together we know a lot. We enter the conversation with curiosity and inquiry. We share our ideas and trust that it will be heard. We use I statements. We focus our language on the task at hand. We hold one another accountable with care and apply yes and. I hear your idea and I'm going to add to it. And we balance speaking and listening. So now I'd like to reintroduce, if you were here for our first webinar, Heather May. Heather May is the project manager with the Maryland Out of School Time Network. She works primarily to advance the community school strategy in the state through the Maryland Coalition for Community Schools. The coalition aims to provide a network of support and professional development for community school educators and leaders, and advocates for state funding and support. She has a BA in Southern Literature from Emory University and a JD from the University of South Carolina School of Law. Heather concentrated on youth and community development and indigent representation. She served as an AmeriCorps Vista with MOST and is a 2019-2020 White Riley Peterson Policy Fellow. So let's welcome again, Heather May.
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here. I am going to now present my screen. I want to open up some websites and stuff for you guys later on, so I want to be able to do that easily. So just give me just 1 second. I think you should be able to see the slides now. So just let me know if that is not the case. If it is the case, I'm just going to plow ahead. So today we are here to talk about out-of-school time planning. So take a look at what you can do to adapt what program offerings you have for the out-of-school time world and for out-of-school time providers particularly. Here is a look at our agenda for today. We're going to recap some of those OST best practices as they relate to you guys. look again at the impact of COVID-19, just so you guys can really get into the headspace of like an executive director at a out of school time provider, for example. What are they thinking? What do they need? How can you meet that need with your offerings? And then I want to look at a couple of case studies. So some successful after school arts programs here in Maryland, what I think they're doing well, and what I think you can take from them and use for yourself. And then I want to just open up some space in the middle here to hear from you all, to see what you've been doing to adapt your programs, what questions you have, and even hear if you've been doing something that you think works really well and you want to share it. That would be great too. So we'll spend some time talking to each other, and then we're going to end it with some tips on networking with other practitioners and how you can market your program. And then I'm going to go through the Google Drive folder that I believe you guys all got in an email this morning, and just take you through what resources are in there and how to use them. So let's see, first up, I am going to, you see these core competency little infographic here. I'm going to talk more about that when we go through the Google Drive at the end. So I'm just going to jump in right here with the impacts of COVID. I think this is a really important slide, and this information comes from a COVID OST census that most conducted a few months ago. And I'm bringing it up again because I want you guys to know, like, this is the state of mind for OST program provider executive directors. So the people that are going to be making the decision about whether or not they want to work with you on an arts OST program. They've lost funding, right? That's what's happened from COVID. Their funding for their grants have either dried up, or they're being used for more direct services like food dropped off and that sort of thing. So they've lost funding for their out of school time programs, and that means less programming, and those interruptions and that lack of consistency means less average daily attendance. And then they're also competing with that all-day virtual school and the rest of the upheavals to students and families' lives that come with this pandemic. So when you're pitching your programs to them, when you're talking to them and engaging with them, you should really acknowledge these restraints that they have in some way, and express to them how you can improve this situation. So when it comes to funding, you have this funding opportunity from the Maryland State Arts Council. And I know Precious is going to talk more in detail about that at the end of the webinar today. So, make sure you're reviewing that and make sure you know and understand what funding you have available. And then, it's not just that though. You also can leverage the network and the professional development and all of the rest of it that is a part of becoming a teaching artist and a part of this program from the Maryland State Arts Council. So, know and understand that and bring that up, because that's a lot that you have to offer, and it's important that you articulate that and they understand that. In terms of loss of programming, that's when you're pitching your actual program, and the most important thing there is that you are following the quality standards and guidelines for very good after school programs, because like I said last time, quality is king. If a student goes to an after school program that is of bad quality, then it's as if they attended no after school program at all. That's what our research tells us. So you're going to want to make sure you pay a lot of attention to those core competencies when you're doing program design. Another thing to look out for is just to make sure that what you have created aligns with the mission and goals and incorporates the brand philosophy and ideology of the program provider that you're pitching to. And I don't mean like create your program so that it caters to whatever, that organization is doing. But you just want to make sure there's some alignment so you're not taking a shot in the dark. And a lot of these OST program providers live and die on the grant cycle, right? So if they have a grant, they have to do and provide programs that are related to it. And so a lot of times, again, they have a lot of constraints in that way. And so you have to just look and see if you're going to be a good fit for that organization. And when it comes to attendance and engagement, that really goes to your own program design and your program profile. I think you can use your professional life as a teaching artist, as a practicing artist, and and as a point of interest to get students and families more engaged with you, because you're living the dream that they're learning about. And you can make sure that you have a lot of diverse program offerings that are virtual and sort of hybrid in person for the time being. And that's more appealing to a large audience because it gives them different options to engage with you and to participate. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So let's talk a little bit about successful after-school arts programs. I want to look at some common practice for high-quality art programs, and I'm going to talk through these from the perspective of an OSC program provider, as opposed to a school setting, because we do have a toolkit for a school setting, which I understand that a lot of you have already seen before. So let's walk through some of these, okay? So like I said, you're teaching artists, and students like that, you have real life artistic experience and knowledge and expertise that you can bring. And it's important that when you talk about that aspect of yourself with program providers, you mention and that you being an artist can enhance the skill building of the students that you're going to be working with. And that it's really a great practice for integrating youth voice and youth leadership when you treat them as sort of peer professionals like you. So that's really important. Next up, funding and support from management makes the programs more successful, right? That's one of our common practices that we know of, and of course they do. So how can you make an executive director your champion? How can you make them interested in you? And there are a couple of strategies for you to do. One is share your positive stories of impact. Almost every single OST program provider, almost every single nonprofit spends time and devotes energy to the collection of positive stories of impact. And so if you can bring that with you in the beginning, then that's an easy sell and an easy win. So anytime, in your career that you've done a workshop for somebody or you've interacted in somebody and they've said, this really meant a lot to me, use that, get in contact with them, see if they'll give you a quote, be able to point to them as a reference and say, here's somebody that says that I impacted them. And that's, direct evidence of your ability to run a successful program. And I think that's something that executive directors are going to want to hear. And another good strategy is to invite them to attend a program or event that you're doing. And they can see firsthand what it's like. And then you should also take a look at the program providers that MOST has put together on the map. Again, that is going to be ready on our website this week. So I will make sure I share out with Precious when that goes live. It is a list of all the program providers in the state that we know of. And you can review their missions and goals just to make sure there's alignment. Next up, talking about space. And I know that this is sort of odd for how we're all virtual now, but you can still do a lot with the sort of four square screen of your computer that's in front of you. And not just when you're having conversations with your executive director, like how you should present yourself. That's not really what I'm talking about. What I mean is with your program design. You can still create a really inspirational and distinctive world for programs, even though it's virtual. And you should really think about what your students are going to be seeing and hearing and getting from your screen. And I think it's important to really take stock here because most of the OST providers are doing virtual programming. I think some are doing very limited in person. If you're interested in a school setting, there's a lot of complications around that in regards to like childcare licensing and that sort of thing and limited use of buildings. So I think you should probably be focusing most on your virtual programs. And this also sort of speaks to this overall theme of branding that's going to be throughout this presentation, branding and marketing for yourself. But look at like YouTube or even Twitch personalities. And I know that seems sort of like, young and far-fetched, but they do a really good job of creating visual interest in their content and branding themselves and branding their content. And what they put behind them in that little computer screen square that I talked about is really intentional, and it's very inviting, and they have a lot of consistency that builds engagement and retention in their users. So I think think about kind of a unique detail like that to this virtual time period, and it's sort of a place to get some inspiration. Next up is setting high standards for young people. As you know, they want to believe and know that you think that they can do something and that they have the capacity and support from you to achieve mastery over a project. So for program design, that means having formally stated values and a code of conduct that you share out with everybody. Um, and then you can also do things like showing off what other projects that their peers have done that you think is illustrative of that high level of mastery. So that's always a really good way to get people more engaged as well. And just keep in mind that, trust is a really big factor in attendance and engagement and in long-term interest in your OST program for your students. So just have those authentic relationship with them. Don't be afraid to give them like honest critiques of their work. You don't have to tell them that everything is amazing. You know what I mean? But you can still like motivate them to continue and do better, and view them as practicing artists like you, and involve them in the work that is typically done by professionals, like creating a portfolio or writing an artist statement. And when you do those kind of things to include young people in that aspect of design of your program, it's very appealing to OST providers. And like I said, again, like OST program providers live and die off these grant cycles, and these grants all want to know how young people are being involved in the design of the program, what leadership roles they have, and how they're contributing overall. So that should really be a part of how you're making your program. That's what they want to see. Next up, audience and public engagement and support can boost attendance and engagement. And a lot of the research from art-specific OST programs still emphasize that putting on performances and putting on public shows, even if it's virtual, is still a really great way not only to again have that engagement and attendance to your program, but also build support for your program in the greater community. And this is something that you can do like right now. As you know, as a teaching artist, I'm sure you've put on a lot of courses and you've done things like that. This is something you can do right now to sort of be a little mini demo into your program. And you can put it up on YouTube, you can have pictures of it on your website, whatever, to be able to show these program providers that you can do what you say you can do. And then you also like have a nice appealing visage to everybody in the community, and that they are invested in you and that they like you. So that's a really great thing that you can do now. And then also, like, it's a good way to raise media literacy for students, in addition to getting attention from your program. And again, that's a very popular sort of grant focus for OST program providers right now, because the shift to virtual everything, they want to see students that are not only know how to use devices, but are have good digital literacy for using tech and for engaging with one another in virtual world. So that's another good approach. And then we just have a couple more here. Creating the framework for projects and inviting input and having positive attention and strong relationships with these children is really, really important. I cannot stress that enough. And I think social emotional learning, for those of you who have not been sort of following along in education, that's been a very big component of a lot of Maryland state specific programs, but also nationally. And I know that it's a very critical component of most OST programs. So if that's not something that you're super familiar with, if you haven't like taken classes in it or something, like that is where you should invest your time in terms of PD right now. And it's really helpful to emphasize or illustrate, what sort of PD support you're getting from, the Maryland State Arts Council or other organizations that are related to SEL, because these OST organizations want to see that you can model that behavior for your students, and that you are integrating those principles into your program design. Again, very, very important. Let's see. I think the last thing I want to talk about here is just so that I'm not reading through like every single one of you for these, you guys, is the tech aspect of it. A lot of OST programs want to see students using modern day technology, computers, Chromebooks, all that kind of stuff. 21st century skills is what they call it. But that can be very difficult during this COVID time. And it also really undersells a lot of the soft skills and that you can learn from arts and STEMs programs. The hard skills, so those like how to use the equipments and tools, like that sells really well for parents and for students in terms of getting them engaged. But it's those soft skills and project-based activities where you're going to see the actual positive impact that you can do for that grant reporting that I told you about. So like example, so just when you're talking about your program, sorry, let me complete that thought. When you're talking about your program, make sure that you're not overly reliant on all fancy tech, because it's really hard to sell that to program providers right now. That's going to be additional cost. It's going to have equity concerns. Not all the students have it or know how to use it or can use it to the best ability. So when you're thinking about what your program is going to be, really consider, how you can balance that. Okay, so let's go on. That was getting very long for everybody, but let's go on to our case studies here. So I want to talk about 2 after-school arts programs that I think work really well. I think you guys probably already know about Young Audiences or have heard of them, because I know they do work with teaching artists. But I wanted to speak about a couple of things that I really like about the way they market their programs and about their program designs. So the first thing that I think they do really well, and I think you guys should look out for when you are making long-term relationships and partnerships with OST program providers, is that, you as a teaching artist, you're a professional, that should be highlighted, you should be elevated, and you should have involvement in how, programs are integrated into overall organizational structures. So if you don't get that support from the organization that you're working with, like, please consider a different organization. There's no need for any of that, but they also have like a really organized website that has a very good explanation of the program offerings and descriptions. You'll see what the mission and the goal is. You'll see who the program, like who the best target audience is, all that kind of stuff. And that's a really nice snapshot of what their program looks like. And you should consider making something similar for what you want for your own. And I'll talk a little bit more about program profiles in a little bit, but that's sort of what I'm talking about. Make sure that you're able to kind of explain your program in a nice, succinct package like that. It's very good. They also have what they're calling asynchronous program offerings, which just means stuff that's happening live, stuff that's been pre-recorded, that sort of thing. I call it on demand, but I think it's a really great way to offer flexibility for your students, also to show that you can do a lot of different things. Like a program's different when it's here's a recording of you doing something versus here's a recording of you being interactive with someone else, etc. So you can showcase a lot of your skills by having both on-demand pre-recorded curriculum and some things that they can come and take advantage of with you. And then they also have a really awesome program that I think is a great thing that you should steal and use for yourself is it's involving the caregivers and family members in the arts after school program. I forget the name of it, but basically they have whoever is the caregiver come on and do an art project with the student, and like that's part of the class. And I think that that is such an amazing adaptation for the COVID-19 situation, because we have so many more family members and caregivers at home with their students. And then you also have students who have special needs or English language learners who need extra support from somebody who's in the room with the student, and that's a really great way to do that. So let's see, next up, Access Art. What I think they do well is that they have created this program that really relates directly to a need being seen in the community. And that is a core competency for quality after school programs. And then it's also, again, speaks to that greater funding constraints that these OSD program providers are having. Like, they are not able to spend money or capacity or investment on a program that does not meet a need of their community, especially at this time. So it's really critical that you're aligning your program with what is happening. So at Morrell Park, which is the elementary school in Baltimore City, they came up with this grab and go event where they have an art kit that you can see pictured here that is sent with with food, a food care package. So it's a really great way of combining those two together and making sure that you're still providing some enrichment to students as a part of what else that they need to get from the school. They also have done a lot of collaborating with the community, like the Grab and Grow project was something that was created with the help of several organizations to put together and to share the cost and subsidize that for families. And then I also want to point out this idea of virtual summer camps. Granted, it's the winter right now, so they don't have summer camps, but there are things like virtual conferences and like camp-like events that are like several days worth of opportunities for students to get involved with. And basically you apply through an RFP, and it's not like a proper hire to do an OST program situation. But I want to bring it up because I do think it's a good opportunity for teaching artists to get their foot in the door into some of these OST program providers. Because then you can say, not only did I do this, you saw it, you collected feedback on the event, it was positive. Here's my idea for adapting what I did in an hour to a full program. So something to look out for when you are just looking at these different programs, see what sort of opportunities they have, even if it's not exactly what you want coming up. Okay, this is that MSDE guidance document that I know you guys have probably heard of right now, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time here. This is just a summary of what they found in the document. A lot of this is probably not super surprising to anyone. What I like about this document and why I wanted to include it is that it has specific program design recommendations for different categories of like artistic endeavor. So for dance, for chorus, for visual arts, etc. And that's a lot of really good recommendations for that stuff that I don't think I would have been able to give you, because it was created by people who work in the fine arts in Maryland schools. So this is great. I'll have a link for it here on this next page. But definitely something that you should look at. And I know I said last time that I was going to create you guys a whole new checklist. But as you can see, you really shouldn't reinvent the wheel. I got sent that MSE document, and I really felt like it was the missing piece to those quality standards and core competencies for you guys. And I think that that's going to be what is most important for you to look at. So the 3 documents for you for adapting your program are going to be that most quality standards framework. It's a short and sweet version. It's only a few pages long, and it does have a checklist like situation on there, so you can just read it, check it that your program has met that. And it has some thoughts and recommendations in there as well. The National After School Association Core Competencies is a much longer explanation of all of them. So if you have questions about it, that's where you should look. And it also includes a really awesome self-assessment worksheet that I think you guys should really do first. And then those state guidelines. So I'm going to take you off this share screen briefly because I want to open these documents for you, but we will come right back. So just a moment. Let's see. Okay, so you're seeing me? Great. All right, everybody. Great. I think you can now see this is the Google Drive folder here that has been created. And again, we're going to go through this at the end. So I just want to draw your attention to this core competency document or folder. So it's got 3 documents in it. This is what they named this document. So I just left it as is. If you guys think I should rename it, just let me know. I can rename it if it's easier. Here are the most quality standards framework that you're going to want to look at. So here's the overview here on page 6. This gives a list of them. They are broken down by administrative and program staff. And so this is generally targeted towards OST program providers. But since you guys are basically the administrators of yourself and your program, you should definitely still look at these because it still has a lot of really good information. And then to just list them, there are 7 in total. And so this is kind of how it reads here. It's got the core competency statement here at the top, and then it tells you how it should be in terms of design, program design, and then how you meet that competency in terms of accountability features within your program design. So that goes through there. Very good document for you to look at. Again, if you want a longer explanation of that, I've got that infographic in here, but you can go to this website right here. You see it here at the top, and it has the entire like huge, it's like 100 and something pages, very long, basically like guide book for you to refer to at any time, or when you have more, if you have questions or you're not understanding something in the other, this is where you should go. This is the Bible, basically. And then again, what I really, really like about it and what I think you should do first before you do too much program design is this self-assessment toolkit. So it's got a self-assessment questionnaire. Basically, we'll open this one for each one of the core competency, and it invites you.
Sorry, I don't want to interrupt, but I don't think we're seeing the document that you have uploaded.
Oh, no.
We're still seeing the drive under OST core competencies.
Oh gosh. Okay. Well, let me do this again. Just a moment. Yikes. You have no idea what I'm talking about. Okay. Nope. Let me try this again. Apologies, everybody. Okay, here we go. Can you see this page? These are the core. This is the core competency website. And so these are the self-assessments tools that I'm talking about. This is what you should do to start first. I will go back to the most one. These have it's a self-assessment tool for each one of the core competencies. So I absolutely invite you to look at that first and go through and do the worksheets and just answer the questions about it and the beginning of your design process, because that'll give you a really good idea of where you need to put a little extra time and a little extra work into. Okay, so let me try this next one again. Sorry about this, everybody. Briefly, just a moment. Okay, now can you see the most document pulled up?
Yes, we can see it. Yep.
Great, thank you so much. Okay, awesome. Sorry about that. Apologies. Okay, so down here on page 6, this is what I'm talking about. Here's the summary that I was mentioning that breaks it into administrative and program. And then here's just an example of one of the core competencies for you to take a look at so you can see how this document works. So it's got a nice affirmative statement here at the beginning. Then it tells you what core competencies are involved in that, and then how you can achieve that through design and through accountability. So right here. And so there are 7 total of these. And so after you do that self-assessment, I suggest you come back to this document and you walk through and you make sure you're doing all of these things here. Okay. Let me go back. Thank you all for your patience. And I will go back to my slide. All right. I believe you can all see that now. Just a moment. Sorry, everyone. Okay. Okay, great. I also wanted to talk a little bit about some of the topics here from the MSCE toolkit, just very briefly. Mostly I want to talk about the materials for your projects point again. I know I mentioned that before, but again, it's a really hard sell if you need a lot of tools and a lot of materials for your project. And one thing that we talk about in OST programming right now during COVID is poverty proofing your program. So for example, if you are doing an OST program that's about like, or an art program that's about like color, for example, maybe you could have all of the students go and pick something from their house that was a color, and then they put it together and they have a color wheel. Or you could have the one being the paints, but just keep in mind that not everybody has all the stuff that they would ordinarily have in a school setting where things are provided. So that's the only point. I just want to really talk about that. Okay, so let's open it up here for discussion. I know I've taken quite a bit of time here, but who has questions about adapting their program? Who wants to share, you know, what they've been working on in terms of program design or what they think's working, anything like that? And if there's something in the chat, I cannot see the chat. So please, just if you don't mind reading out, Precious or whomever.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you.
I'm sure it takes a moment to process all the amazing information shared. Thank you, Heather.
Yes, so I do, again, I know that I'm sort of like semi-lecturing up here to you guys. So that's why I want to go through this drive folder at the end, just to make sure you know that everything that I said is available for you to peruse at, you know, your leisure. And then also you can always contact me about anything. I will bring up, just in case people, if you weren't here last time, I remember one of the things that was brought up and I really loved it. And I think it was a really good example of how to adapt your program, was the woman who put on like little theater shows, like on front yards of different people in her community. And then she like talked about her program to her local city council and got funding through them as well. So I thought that was a really great example of how you can take wanting to do theater, wanting to do dance and movement studies into something that worked during COVID. And then she also did that extra step of leveraging herself and finding her community champion. So I thought that was really awesome.
And Heather, that same person is on chat.
Oh, nice. I'm
Yeah.
talking about you. Hello.
Yeah. Asking to walk through the download that you suggested to just share more of the resources.
Yes, of course, of course. Do you want me to do that now, or do you want to do it at the end? You tell me, because I have one more section here on just like marketing your program. So if we want to go back and forth.
I'm fine with whatever. I think that yeah, Jennifer, if you know that, we definitely will go through the download. But if you have any specific questions, this is definitely the time for it.
Yeah, but I will go through those. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, no specific questions now.
Okay, no problem. Those are you know, those core competency things are pretty big, especially the NAA one. That's why, again, I recommend just sticking with that most one for your first pass through. The quality of your program design is going to be one of the main things that OST providers want to see. the most quality framework is what has been adopted in the state of Maryland. So I highly recommend you taking a look at it. It was something that was put together with a lot of OST providers. So their voice is definitely there. So apart from the funding, it's going to be, did you actually design a quality OST program? Those are going to be your two things. So.
Sweet. And Kat just put your contact information in the chat, just in case folks wanted to maybe have a deep dive conversation with you.
Yes, I was going to suggest that. Thank you so much, Kat. Thank you, Precious. I am absolutely available if you want to talk about your specific program. I know it's a little, feels a little daunting over Google Meets here to do that, or if you want me to read something that, like something you've written up for it, anything like that, please email me and do it. I'm happy to do it. I don't mind at all. I'm going to go on to the marketing now, though, because I feel a little scared about time. I spent a lot of time in one of those slides, more time than I meant to. So I'm going to move on, but just if you have other questions, put it in there, and we're going to go through those documents again at the end here, if that is okay with everybody. Okay.
We're good to go.
Okay. So the last thing here is I wanted to talk about, this is like our last big content session. I want to talk about marketing your program. And this is a little bit about marketing yourself and advocating for yourself too. So keep that in mind. These all apply to talking about yourself as well as your program, because you're really selling a package. One of the most important things I think you can do, and I spoke with Precious about this beforehand, and I know it's something that the Maryland State Arts Council is working on as a part of their website redesign, is having some kind of program profile, some place where you talk about what you do, what you offer, who the audience is, who you are, all of that kind of stuff. Generally, I've seen it in the form of a one-pager, so like a one-page document that includes that information. I have included in the Drive folder a template that you can use to put your information on, that's a good overview of what that can look like. And just make sure that if you have any impact data, so any workshops or courses or anything that you have done where you have collected data at the end of it that you think is relevant to this, that should always be included. That's something that OST providers really want to see, outcome-based information. So show your data if you have it. Next up, using social media and finding your champions. I really recommend that you guys have an online OST presence. And I'm being specific here because I don't mean have just a presence as you as an artist. You should really have an online presence that shows you as a teaching artist, or shows you like being an educator in some way. So a little beyond just a portfolio of your creations. Because I think that's a good way to show not just that you can do, again, you can do what you say you can do, but that you're committed to this OST world. You've joined it. You're a part of it. And it's also a place where you can talk about yourself and your work and methodology, and build a community of students and family and other community members like around you who support you and can speak to your effectiveness and can speak to your ability to retain an audience. And then using it to connect with and find your champions. One of the things that I like to do is to go on with our most social media account, is just go on and like friend all the schools that we're working with, all the program providers that we're working with, our representatives, and all that kind of stuff. And you can find that information and see what they're up to, and see what their interests are, and then connect with them, tell them who you are and what you're doing. Your local government people, they always want to hear from you, but also take a look at like your town councils, committees that they have. The governor's office has some different bodies as well. There are a lot of big systems in Maryland and in your local communities that can help you transition into this OST world, and can really be your friends for a long time. So reach out to them and get to know them. And that's basically a part of getting to know your community in general. With that, I would say if you're looking at a particular OST program provider, if you're eyeballing them and you're interested in working with them, like take the Y in Central Maryland, for example, if that's who you want to work with, visit their website, get to know what they're doing, what the communities that they serve, what the population is like. Start going to some of their PD or their other meetings. It's really important that people know who you are and what you do. And once they, see that you're invested in them, they remember you for openings that they have. They remember you for webinars, all that kind of stuff. So definitely get out there and make yourself known. And advocate for yourself in that way. Similarly, make a list of your target partners and just email them directly and tell them, this is the kind of funding I can get. This is what I want to do. This is my program, and let's connect and see how we can partner together. That's really about all you need to do. You can email the executive directors directly. Sometimes in bigger OST providers, they have specific people who do programming for OST, like Family League of Baltimore, for example. They have a lot of projects, but they have an OST person. That is who you would contact first. Engage with other practitioners and advocates for support. And so this is not just to do PD, but also for the program design. That's what I'm talking about. Start having a relationship with the OST world. Join us here. start coming to the things that are offered for practitioners. Start getting involved in advocacy conversations about funding. Make yourself present on this scene. And people will remember you. And then I think I mentioned this earlier, but even with COVID, we're still seeing a lot of reports and research that's saying art events and activities, like public art events and public activities, are really good for engagement and for just like community presence and that sort of thing. So if you are able to do a program, a virtual program or an in-person program that you can advertise, that's still really great. That's what people like to see, and it'll go a long way for you as well. So those are just some strategies that I think you guys should try. And then I want to go through again this resource folder. So I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to try to do this again, y'all. Bear with me.
And Heather, while you get that up, Kevin put in the chat another strategy that he found. He found that schools are having interest in having virtual clubs, whereas they would usually have a grade-wide residency, so smaller groups of 10. Some counties are giving teachers incentives, such as planning time or class time, to host virtual clubs to help the school community and opportunities for students and parents to participate together.
Yes, absolutely. That's a really good point. One of the things that we have seen too, just as like reports again from Maryland and from our National After School Alliance friends, is that students really need time and space within this constant virtual day to develop those peer-to-peer relationships, and after school programs are one of the only avenues for them inside like an academic or an enrichment based environment. Sometimes kids still get together online for video games and things like that, but the vast majority of kids are just not having a place where they can make friends. And that's something that's so important, and it's part of that larger conversation about social emotional learning and trauma that kids are going through as a result of COVID. And it's really, really critical for a successful OST program, for a program that is going to be appealing, is that it creates space for that, and that is included in the design. So that's a really good point. Thank you so much. I don't know okay, no, that's good. Okay. Let me try this here again to go through this folder with you guys. Here we go. Okay. So, sorry about that. Can you guys see this screen now? If you just give me a thumbs up if you can see it. Awesome, perfect, great, okay. So this is the main Google Drive folder that I've created for you guys to look at, because I know, again, that I've done quite a bit of talking for everybody. So the first thing I'm going to draw attention to are these two PowerPoint things right here. These are the slides for both the Friday, that's building partnerships, and today, out of school time planning. There's also this resource link document. This is for, I don't think you guys can see that, right? How about now? I think you should.
We can. Yep.
Perfect. Okay, I found the button. So this is for links for things that I just could not download and put in here. Here is the webinar recording for Friday. That's right up here at the top. This is going to be some OST best practices. We've got the National After School Alliance Code of Ethics for practitioners, always good to look through. And then the core competencies. This is the website that has those self-assessment tools. So this is a really good one here. And then some specific PD, topic-specific PD resources, and then a lot of resources and a lot of tools for adapting your program. I didn't want to recreate any of this, but this is a lot of good stuff to go through if you're looking for specifically for like virtual, shifting to virtual and that kind of thing. And then there are some COVID-19 related resources. Most has its own recovery and reopening guide. I mentioned the census and town halls that we have done. That information, like data from all of that, is on this link right here if you want to learn more about how OST program providers responded to all of that. The After School Alliance has their own resource page. There's also CDC guidelines, MSDE. This is Teaching Artist COVID-19 community conversation, but it's a teaching artist group from New York. But it was still very interesting to listen to. And then the Teaching Artist Guild COVID resources. So that is this page. And then I am just going to come back over here, back to our main drive folder. That was our resource link page. Arts and after school research. This is just a collection of relevant, timely resource materials, research materials for you guys to have better talking points on why and how arts OST programs are successful. And then we have some COVID-19 resources. These are similar to what is in that resource document, but I was just able to download them. It also includes the Maryland Strong Education Recovery Map. One of the things I talked about was alignment to mission and goals. So if you are trying to pitch to a particular school, for example, I would look at this and I would look at whatever district or school specific blueprint or whatever planning document they call it. Most of them are called blueprints that talk about what that school specific goals and targets are. Maybe it'll be literacy, maybe it'll be, attendance. It can be any number of things. Look at that document and spend some time thinking about how your program can support that goal, because that's going to be very compelling for them. And then similarly with an OST program provider, they will have that information right on their website. It'll be like their priorities or something like that it'll be called. So again, that's that's good information to keep in mind as an overall theme for your design. And then here we have marketing your program. Here is that template I was talking about, the program profile template. I'll just take a look at it here for you guys. I think you can see it. Make sure you got your logo on it. Here's that quote from that stakeholder. Gives information about your data. Overview of the community needs, and then how you meet that need. There we go. So just one page. This is pretty critical. This is going to be what you want to send as like your, like your first interaction with these people should include something like this. If you're emailing the executive director, attach this or link it to wherever it is on your website if you have it. So this is a really important document, I would say. You definitely need something that can give a quick snapshot and speak to who you are and what you can do. I've also included a couple of other marketing and branding information. This is a really good PDF here, examples of effective after-school messaging. Like I've mentioned, storytelling and stories of impact is really important in the OST world. So you want to make sure that, you know, you're speaking a common language with the rest of us here. And just a couple of other things here as well for you to look at. And then finally, this OST core competency, I saved this for the end. These are those big documents that we were talking about. So let's look first here at the MSDE one. And I just want to go to, I just want to go to this section here of the table of contents. So again, this is what I think makes this a really amazing document, is that it gives specific recommendations for each of these categories, depending on the type of art or art practice that's happening. So this gets into very good nitty gritty practical details, and it's a very good tool for that. So that's what you want to look at for there. And then the most standards, out of school time quality standards. This was written in 2010, but it's been adopted statewide and it's still good information. And this is how it's broken up. This sort of introduction gives you an overview of how it's written, but it's broken up into two sections: an administrative quality standards and program quality standards. And so what I was saying about the administrative quality standards is that this is generally from the perspective of an OSC program provider. You are a program provider of one at this point, I think most of you. So this just is from your sort of professional administrative viewpoint of the program. A lot of this stuff ends up getting taken over by the actual program provider, community-based organization that you work with, or the school. But when you're designing your program, you should still look to these and make sure that these aspects are there or can be placed easily. And then it's got the actual program quality standards. So for what your community should be like, what sort of content you should be doing, and how that relates to youth development, and then how you're handling community engagement. And there are 7 little content areas here for you to go through. And I know I'm running up on the time here, so I'm going to be fast. But here's just an overview of what they are, and then they give you like 1, 2, 3. These are not technically check boxes, but they are check boxes. So that's what you can look through for that. And then if you have more questions, go to that big NAA core competency guidebook that has lots of explanations in it, and use those self-assessment tools. So I hope that helped.
Amazing. Yes. Super helpful. Thank you so much, Heather. So I'm just going to wrap us up with some important information before we close. In addition to all the amazing marketing advice, the teaching artist roster at the Maryland State Arts Council is also a tool. It's also an amazing opportunity to leverage and heighten your visibility in the teaching artist field. So if you are already on the roster, woohoo, we're working with you. If you are not on the roster, I encourage you to please apply. It's a curated directory. And what happens is that if you can say to a provider, hey, I have the rubber stamp approval of the Maryland State Arts Council, and I come with funding, that really helps building your case. So please consider applying to the teaching artist roster if you haven't considered it in the past. As well, like I said, the teaching artist roster is tied to funding. So that's a part of your marketing tool in your toolkit. So if you are on the roster, teaching artists are connected to being eligible to receive an arts and education grant, which gives grants up to $5,000. So covers up to $5,000 of engagement costs. So once again, consider the grant, consider the roster. They're really helpful for your advancement in your career. So now that has been completed, I also want to let you all know that we do have a 3rd webinar in this series, but it's specifically only to MSAC teaching artists or prospective applicants. So if you are not a teaching artist on our roster, I encourage you to even just put a draft in Smart Simple. We'll take that. You don't even have to submit the application to join us for the Out of School Time Networking webinar, because this will be an opportunity where you can have direct in-person virtual conversations with some out of school time providers to share your programming and to get that information. The webinar will be December 7th. So that's a Monday again, from 1 to 3:30 p.m. No worries. So this is Out of School Time Networking. This is the last webinar in our 3-part series. So if you are a teaching artist or a prospective applicant, please register, because we'd love to see you there. So we are running out of time. So instead of having a 3-minute reflection, Kat, if you can just put the evaluation link, that would be great. Please know that if this has been a helpful webinar for you, if you want Heather back, if you want things like this to continue, please let us know. We're committed and dedicated to sharing and to be changing and updating our processes and professional development throughout the year. So filling out that evaluation link will really help us. So my last thank you and my last gesture of gratitude. Thank you for joining us today. To learn more about similar topics, news, and to keep in touch, you should definitely join our mailing list, especially if you want to make a profile on our artist registry, which we are hoping to launch very, very, very soon. So if you want to get on the map, on all the maps, the Maryland State Arts Council map, the MOST map, the Art Look maps, if you want to all of those maps and that visibility, please sign up for our mailing list. Thank you. And that is the end of our program today. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you, everybody.